So thank you, Ali. I'm Heather West. I'm a Senior Director for Cybersecurity and Privacy Services at Venable. I also work with the Alliance for Trust in AI, which is working to encourage innovation and trust across the ecosystem beyond the kind of traditional AI actors. I'm here with Elham Tabasi, who's the Chief AI Advisor, among other titles, and Chief Technology Officer for the US AI Safety Institute. If you want the full list, you can go find her bio. But I think, AI has been all over the place over the last year, but Elham, you've been involved a lot longer than that. The AI conversation isn't new, and you have a foot in both worlds. You're talking to all of us policy wonks, where I sit. You're talking to all of the technologists, and NIST is really playing this central role in implementing the AI executive order that you've also heard a bunch about today. If we were having this conversation 4 or 5 months ago, I would ask you how in the world you were going to start with such an important, long list of to-dos, but you're already working through that. Can you talk to us about what you're up to at NIST and some of that scene setting for the EO?
Oh, absolutely. First, I want to thank the organizers, Austin, Rachel, everybody, for including me in this program. Delighted to be here. And thanks to all of you for spending your lunchtime listening to me, so thanks. If that's okay, I'll start by saying a few words about NIST, who we are, and that hopefully gives context about why we are doing what we are doing in the AI space. NIST is a non-regulatory agency under Department of Commerce with a unique mission of advancing US innovation and industrial competitiveness. We were born in 1901. This has been our mission, and since then, we have built a very broad portfolio of research and a long-standing tradition of cultivating trust in technology. We do that by advancing measurement science and standards that make technology more reliable, more valid, more secure, more private, in other words, more trustworthy. And that's exactly what we are doing in the space of AI. A little over a year ago, we released the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, or AI RMF, as we affectionately call it. Directed by a congressional mandate, AI RMF is a voluntary framework for managing the risk of AI in a flexible, structured, and measurable way, so that everyone can benefit from the advances and promises of AI in a fair, equitable way. The AI RMF, true to everything that we do, was developed by engaging the community and on getting their inputs in the development of the AI RMF. Our recent assignments builds on those foundational work and supercharge our efforts in cultivating trust in AI. The executive order that was released on October 30th is centered on our commitment to harness the power of AI for good while minimizing and mitigating and managing its negative consequences and protecting individuals, societies, and communities. The EO, as we heard from Austin this morning, sets a lot of actions in motion, a lot of tasks for many of the government agencies, including NIST. Specifically, the EO tasked us by developing guidelines for evaluations, for red teaming, for safety, security, synthetic content understanding, provenance data, tracking and management. It also asked us to develop a global plan for engagement for promotion of the technically sound standards. Since the EO, we had hit the ground running. In December, we put out a document for measuring the efficacy of the differential privacy techniques out for public comment. We also put a request for information out, which closed on February 2nd. We heard from more than 225 entities, more than 2,500 pages of comments that we have been going through, distilling those inputs very carefully. In January, we put out a workshop for understanding secure software development for AI, particularly for dual-use foundational models. And in the past few weeks, we had all of us our heads down on developing drafts in response to the EO tasks to be able to put it out for public comment. So hearing from the community and getting their inputs is really important to us. Majority of these EO tasks that I mentioned had a deadline of 270 days. That gets us to the end of July. It sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but we are extremely committed and excited about this work. We all understand really the honor of being in the middle of all of these things and contribute to the science, to the community, to the whole nation in a meaningful way. But the work that the EO starts should not and cannot stop after the deadline of getting the deliverables out. So we are extremely happy and excited to leverage a new resource, the US AI Safety Institute, that was announced by Vice President Harris on November 1st, to give a long-lasting approach to the research, evaluation, standard work that we are building those foundations with the community as the work that we have been doing and supercharging and expediting them through the work of the EO, to build a long-lasting approach to research evaluation standards, to be able to build the scientific underpinning that we need for robust evaluations of the AI, the technical building blocks for development of empirically backed standards. Everybody wants to evaluate AI systems. They want to make sure that AI systems are safe, secure, trustworthy, but there's a lot of questions unanswered and a lot of technical gap on how actually do that evaluation. So through the Institute and through the consortium, we're super excited to continue the work with the community to advance the science, practice, and policy of AI and AI safety.
I love it. Thank you. So there's been a huge amount of attention to AI. Obviously, that's why we're all here. And there's been conversation about how AI is different and how it's not. Can you talk a little bit about how NIST's long history of standards work really informs the work that you're doing now on artificial intelligence?
Yeah, happy to. On the process-wise and what we learned from the past experiences, which we did, and I think I have to also acknowledge all of my colleagues doing this work for decades because we really built on top of their success. What we have learned from those processes, you mentioned the cybersecurity framework, the privacy framework, was the importance of reaching out, building a community, stakeholder engagement, and get their input. We have really smart people at NIST, but we also know that we don't know all of the answers. So it's really important to listen to the scientific community. Our scientific independence and integrity is really important, but we can only advance it and strengthen it by engaging the scientific community, but broader community. AI being interdisciplinary, early on we realized that we need to reach out to much broader community and increase the diversity of the experiences, backgrounds, thought processes that we are engaging. We definitely wanted to hear from technology developers that brings skills of the computer scientists, mathematicians, statisticians, but also the community that study the impact of the technology. That's cognitive scientists, psychologists, sociologists, even philosophers. But most importantly, we also need to hear from the community that are using the technology. That becomes everybody that uses the technology in everyday life, knowing or not knowing that they're using the technology and trying to understand the impact on them. So that was something that we built. And then the other thing that I personally, and I share some of my personal stories, that I learned through participating in many of the standard development processes with international standard organizations or ISO, the importance of consensus building. That means that just by bringing the participations and bringing diverse set of eyes and brains is not enough. We should really listen, engage them, get their input, take it across all because frankly, we don't all across these different disciplines speak the same language. So working on building that consensus, the consensus that works across all of the community became really important. My personal story is that way back in 2005, I started participating in standard development processes. My first proposal failed, not with a lot of no votes, because there was a lot of abstain votes. And as I was walking the room really upset and unhappy, somebody told me that every majority starts with a minority. So we have to ground the discussions in the data, bring more people, walk them, talk with them, and building the consensus. So these are the two things. But technically speaking, you're absolutely right. AI is not quite new, and at the end of the day, it's a software and information technology, but it's also different in many different ways that we talk in AI RMF about that too.
Yes, it's been very fun over the last year for me to explain to people how much they use AI already, even though that this topic feels very new for a lot of people. But the topic also feels much more abstract than a lot of the things that we think of as standards and technology, and really in NIST's wheelhouse. Someone recently described it to me, and I love this, as turning English homework into physics homework. How do you deal with that ambiguity constructively, and how do you kind of make it more concrete? You are in the business of measurement science.
I don't know, making English homework to physics means that it's you're increasing the difficulty. For some of us, physics homework might be easier than English.
They're both hard. They're hard in really different ways.
Yes, they're both hard. Homework is hard. Let's just talk about that. Right. It's the ambiguity, and I talked a little bit answering the past question that having a shared understanding of concepts and terminology matters. So one of the things that we did as part of the AI RMF was the first thing actually we realized that we have to do was unpacking the concepts of trust and trustworthy. So when we started doing the AI RMF, there was a lot of other value-based high-level principles that talk about, for example, AI systems to be responsible and trustworthy. But what those really mean in technical or socio-technical terms for the people that want to design, develop, deploy, evaluate AI systems. So we work with the community to unpack these concepts, this maybe complex concept into, for AI RMF, we went from principles to practice, from practice to technical building blocks, or we call them the trustworthiness characteristics of AI systems. I briefly mentioned them that for AI systems to be trustworthy, they should at least be valid and reliable, safe, secure, and resilient, privacy enhanced, interpretable and explainable, fair with a harmful bias, managed and accountable and transparent. Then we work with the community to come on a shared understanding for each of this concept. And this is really important step because we can't measure things that we don't know. So we have to first have a good understanding of what it is that we want to measure to be able to measure them. And as we all know, we can't improve things that we cannot measure. So if we really want to improve the trustworthiness, we need to understand what it is and be able to measure them. So that becomes sort of at the technical level or at the socio-technical level across. But it's also that the different disciplines, the terms may mean different things to them. So even terms such as risk or bias, that we may think that we all have a good understanding of that, when we start talking with a different community, we realize that, no, they have different meanings, right? For example, bias, and we had a publication on that that came out March of 2022. When you talk with the more technical community, they take the definition of the bias as more statistical and computational bias. So and a lot of time it just gets equatable or summarized into demographic disparity, for example. But when you talk with the human factor people, they also look at bias as how the different informations that coming out of the AI algorithm is being understood, processed with different people. So how human cognitive ability presents itself in processing the information from the AI systems is another bias that the other community didn't even acknowledge it or use it. And on top of this is also the systemic bias built into our societies, our processes. So if we do a statistically valid representative sampling of any of the concepts of our society today, we're going to end up with biased data. So even one term, when you go across the different communities, you see that they are being used differently. So we bring all of these communities together, and we think that's a really important step.
I think that helps make sure that we all understand what you're trying to say too. And I do love that question about how do we measure bias. It's such a squishy term until it's not, and it's so useful to have that. So when we're talking about kind of all of these different languages, one of the things that struck me about the EO and some of the work that's going on is how much of this work is borrowing from some of the language of cybersecurity. And red teaming and vulnerabilities and thinking through, here's the flaw in the system, what do we call it? Here's how we test the flaws in the system, what do we call that? We're using these words across a broader scope than has been traditional. How are you thinking about these words, and how do we kind of broaden that?
Right, we have to understand how they're being used and then broadening it, as you said, right? So the red teaming, the way it has been used, AI red teaming, and EO gives a definition for AI red teaming, is not quite the same thing that the cybersecurity are using. And it's really important, again, to have all of these conversations. I add another example of that is open source, right?
Yes.
Open sourceness is not the same concept for AI models as we know it 20 years ago for the operating system. So we shouldn't just use that term and drop it into the AI systems. But I will add another layer, another dimension here too, that AI systems are not just about data, compute, and algorithm. There are complex interactions of data, compute, and algorithm with the environment that they're being operating in, human that operates it, being used or being impacted. So I think that part that makes us to look at all of the previous practices that were sometimes purely technical, now start looking at them from a socio-technical lens, gives another dimension of the at least thinking about it and broadening it.
Yeah. I love that the themes here are that this work has been going on forever and that this work is socio-technical. I'm a nerd, but I love society. I'm here for that intersection.
If I can say something, what you said remind me to say this thing that I told you that NIST was established in 1901, and it was established to work on the standards, and the word standard actually appears in the constitutions and in the mission of NIST. It was developed to work on the standards for measuring length, mass, electricity, everything that was really important for the technology at the turn of the century at that time. We are doing the very same thing now today. So it's not just that AI has been the same, but our mission stays the same, and we are trying to understand what's the right standards for the technologies important for this turn of century, which is AI.
And someday AI will be as boring as a ruler. Not quite, but maybe. Like I actually think that's important.
I hope so, because then that means that the field has been
we
really
understand
mature.
it, we trust it, we know that it's consistent. NIST is hardly the only organization working on AI safety and security and standards. How are you working with other AI safety institutes, other standards bodies internationally?
You're absolutely right. There has been a lot of really good work has been done before us, as has been happening right now. When we were developing AI RMF, we made it our mission or something really important for us to build on top of the work that has been done, do not reinvent the wheel, and again, leverage all of the good work of the community. And when AI RMF was released, we also put crosswalks out so that it gives a semantic alignment between AI RMF and other documents. So at the time of the release, we put a crosswalk with the OECD AI recommendations, with then the draft of the EU AI Act, with the AI Bill of Rights, with some of the documents coming out of the standard development processes. Since then, we have been working on more crosswalks with Singapore AI governance so that globally we have, again, some sort of a semantic alignment. We also put a roadmap out when AI RMF was released, and alignment with other standards and frameworks and test evaluation, verification, validations was the top 2 on the roadmap, and the roadmap was also informed with the community. And that's what we have been doing all along, and it's really good that the tasking that we have been gotten through the EO is pretty much aligned with what we were doing. So alignment is really important. The more global conversations on being on the same page in terms and understanding the commonality of the approaches, but where the approaches diverge and what we can do about them becomes really important.
That's awesome. On that note, I know that you have a huge amount of interest from folks, companies, organizations, civil society, working with you on this AI effort. I don't even know how to come up with the bucket term. Are there good ways for people, maybe in this room, maybe watching online, to get involved in the process?
Thank you for that question. Really grateful for all of the support and engagement of the community. But we love to hear from you. We love to hear about the things that had worked in the different buckets of the work that we have and through the requests for information that we put out, documents for public comments that we put out, things that had work approaches that have been tested, but also things that has not worked. Negative results is also as important as the positive results. If you had not joined our mailing list, please join so you get our request for a lot of help and inputs. Join the consortiums, and a lot of good work is happening on the consortiums. But basically engage and let's work together to build that scientific underpinning for AI evaluations, AI assurance. Let's make sure that we have standards that are clear, implementable, technically sound. Let's build more standardized test environment and basically make them available to everybody so it becomes scalable, hopefully trying to solve the problem of the AI assurance together.
I love it. But your first opportunity to get engaged in the conversation is right now. We would love to take a couple of questions before we close with Elham. I see some back there.
Thank you for being here and speaking to us about this. One of the questions I have is with the Safety Institute. I was wondering if you could speak a little more about setting up standards, guidelines, and benchmarks for generative models, and if you all are working with other agencies that might have similar safety institutes, and just speak a little more about that. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. So the Safety Institute announced by Vice President Harris on November 1st for us is to advance the science, practice, and policy of for AI safety and trust. We also put a consortium together. The consortium is going to be a convening place for exchange of informations, experiences, experiments, and the work that we can do with the whole community, advancing again the science of that. They're going to also be part of the work of the Institute that's not going to be part of the consortium, and we're excited about all of those evaluations that we can do. It's in terms of the development of the guidelines and the test environments, we are really heads down on developing all of the tasks on the EO. So by July, there should have guidelines for AI evaluations, guidelines for AI red teaming, some initiative on building the test environment, and we are looking forward to continue that work as part of the consortium and institute, both of them. In doing that work, as we have always been doing, we leverage the work of the community, we collaborate. Collaboration across the government agencies is extremely important. That's where a lot of domain expertise comes to us. A lot of the work that we are doing, like AI RMF evaluations, is horizontal. By working with the government agencies, then we can build those verticals, domain expertise, domain specificities. And global coordinations on standards is extremely important. That's one of the tasks that we have. So in that sense, speaking and coordinating and working with the other institutes globally is important. I don't have the specifics for that. We're all figuring out how to do all of these things. But again, we all are working on the same problem. So by bringing the eyes and brains and focusing on the same problem, we can do better.
Yeah. Great, thanks. I think one over here.
Hi there. My impression of NIST is that it's very much a scientific organization, and I wonder whether is it all unusual for your organization to have this technology push of AI in this case driving some of your scientific work? Is this at all unusual for your organization? Are there other cases of technology evolving how scientists and engineers, for instance, work together?
I don't think it's unusual. It's really a continuation of all of the work that we have been doing. We had in the past 20 years, the first version of the CSF cybersecurity framework came out in 2014. Last week, a revision of that was released. So the work that we are doing in AI is very close and similar to addressing the need of the then cybersecurity and now the AI. What we do is developing and advancing measurement science, writing the guidelines and methodologies for how to do evaluations of the AI systems. So it's AI or advanced communications or quantum. These are all the same, for us is the same mission, and even our approach is very similar.
I love it. I think we have time for one more quick question.
Thank you so much. I have a quick question from the EU. You have, of course, also the AI Act that has recently passed. And there's kind of a fear that will stifle innovation a little bit. At the same time, they've provisions kind of regulatory sandboxes where together with agencies, regulatory agencies, you can work together on kind of finding a framework on engaging with industry, as you said as well, with the community, on making sure that you find common ground. What I think is very difficult about that is making sure that the regulators kind of come outside of their ivory tower, I would say, a bit charged. How have you kind of done that in making sure that you can kind of engage them at the right time and make sure that regulators are able to meet with businesses rather than meet them at the end of the process, if that makes sense?
Thank you for the question. NIST is a non-regulatory agency, so we don't get into the regulations or policy, but what we do is by advancing the science and by strengthening the scientific underpinning, or even building the right technical building blocks for the guidelines and developing the guidelines, hopefully all of these things are helping with a more evidence-based, data-grounded policy, right? So the laws can come and say that, and we saw it in New York law, that AI should be non-discriminatory. But as we discussed today, what does it really mean and how to measure it? The laws stay at abstract levels. The guidelines that we are developing, all of them purely scientific, from the scientific and socio-technical lens, is trying to answer those questions, that what we mean by discriminations or bias, how to measure them, what are the methods to measure them, that can help policy and regulations more helpful.
And measurement science will make all of these regulations better.
If you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Exactly. So I thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us, and I will turn it back to Ali.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.